I'm Vicki Hogarth, and welcome to a special episode of Southwest Magazine on location in Fredericton, where I will be sitting down with the Premier of New Brunswick, the Honourable Blaine Higgs, in his office for a look back at 2023 and a look ahead at 2024. Here is our year in review. Premier Higgs, thank you for sitting down with me today for a year in review. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's my pleasure, Vicki. We're glad to have you here in the office. And aren't you impressed? Look at this Christmas tree.
Love the Christmas tree.
All of the homemade decorations. It's really special. I've been here a few nights since it's been put up, and it's beautiful here at night.
When you're looking back at 2023, how did it inform the $1.2 billion capital budget and the decisions you're making going into 2024-25?
Well, we had a number of projects that costs had gone up that we kept on the budget because that we felt they were important to have done. So we had them in the process, but then found, well, we'll absorb the continued the cost factor. But there were some new ones that came along that we hadn't planned on directly, and that is the number of students that we have now in the province. So we're up, I think the numbers are around 5,000 or 6,000 new students. So not only schools that we plan to close or replace, we've had to keep them running as well as build new ones. And so in the capital budget there are 4 to 6 schools that are identified in some manner that we need to build. So great problem to have after maybe, if I think back 3 years ago or 4, when communities are shrinking and schools are closing and our average age of the population is increasing. It's actually decreasing now. We lost a year off of our age demographics. I'm not necessarily helping that stat, but we've gone from 46 down to 45.
And 46 last year was down from before
it was down
as
a bit.
well.
Yeah, because people were coming, but younger families, which is wonderful.
Can we talk a little bit about the cost of living and inflation? I imagine the budget also has to address that in terms of what things cost these days. How is your government supporting New Brunswickers as we navigate this difficult and trying time? Even just hearing NB Power is looking to increase rates, all these things add up to just more bills on the table when you come home.
Yeah, that's very true. And so trying to mitigate that as much as we can, while not raising taxes on the one hand in order to spend money on the other, but it's trying to have focused programs that will help. So as an example of that would be the home heat program with the heat pumps. So we added another $30 million to that. It's a $100 million program, and it's to get people to use less of what's more expensive. Same thing, we looked at the smart grids is now rolling out. It's actually happening, so you can manage your heating costs. The other areas in social assistance, we've raised the rates in social assistance. We've allowed people to work more with less clawback. We've raised the seniors' benefits up by 50%. Minimum wage has gone up every year and will go up again in April. The programs that for seniors, with a senior spouse that one may be in the nursing home and one is home trying to manage their home, and it was a 60% went to nursing homes and 40% stayed at home. We've reversed that so we can help those people stay in their home longer and afford it. Looking at what you mentioned, the increase for NB Power, it has to go through the EUB process, so we'll see where that ends up. But we're looking at how we can mitigate at least the shock of all of that, and I don't know what that looks like right now. There could be different programs, but at the end of the day, we have federal policies that have increased the cost of living. The carbon tax, I believe, is a failed experiment. And I don't support it, and I would scrap it tomorrow if I had the ability to do so. So I think that I'm not alone in that, but it's added the cost of everything we do. We see in the forecast stabilization of interest rates. We actually see a bit of decline in that regard in terms of inflation. So I'm optimistic that we've peaked and we're going to start to see a gradual decrease in cost of living. But we'll continue to do as much as we can to help people that are working every day but finding it so difficult to manage their households. And with people renewing the mortgages, going from a 3% to a 6 or 8% is a big shift. Some cases you can mitigate that with duration of mortgages, some cases you can't. And the assessments have gone up, we know, a factor of our population growth. We're building new homes. We started up NB housing. We're looking at the ones, the subsidized homes or buildings, so that we can actually get more of them up. We've got record growth in housing starts in the province. You know, it peaked last year. It's down a little bit only because there will be a balance here over the next few years. But something new I'd like to introduce in the housing program is subsidized housing. I'd like to start a philosophy of lease to own, so that at the end of the day, the tenant that's there owns that unit. And I think there's a pride of ownership, of care, and builders basically would recognize that if someone thinks they're going to own it, and at the end of the day, they will be proud of that fact. They'll look after it, but more importantly, we see a path of out of the maybe the social assistance program as they once knew it, but let them progress in life.
In smaller communities like St. Andrews, we've seen councils do grants towards developers to entice them to build in the community. What are the challenges that you're finding when, especially in smaller communities that might not attract big developers to create affordable housing, especially in particular areas? What are the biggest challenges?
Well, that's where we've offered like the $70,000 that we pay against a new home being built, and so that they'll find that affordable. But part of the challenge is that the number of builders is actually finding enough people that are in the trades, because we could use everyone we can find now, and the cost of material, which is going down too. We've started the rent bank as well to give people a break then as the rents increase. We have the control mechanism for appeals, so people that have been in a building and all of a sudden they want to raise the rent, we have a control system and appeals that a lot get turned down. That doesn't so much apply to new builds, because someone building a new build is coming right into a market, but it does apply when subsidization is involved, and that's where we'd get involved locally. The program with the rent bank and such, it's a grant formula. There's an activity that when the federal government took off the building, the federal portion of the HST. I looked at that too here, and I basically asked builders, okay, so what does this mean to a tenant? Mm-hmm. And what's it mean to you building more buildings? And in both cases, I did not get an answer that would say we should take off the provincial portion. The federal portion's already gone, so basically people are building what they're building now, either through capabilities, market conditions, or just the fact that the vacancies are very low, and they need to have more units, and they're in the business.
Last year, when we sat down for a year in review, I was telling you that we were seeing homeless people really for the first time in bigger numbers in communities like St. Stephen in southwest New Brunswick. This year, that number has increased. If I'm being conservative about an estimate, it's between 50 and 70 in St. Stephen alone. Some are saying it's closer to 100. Why do you think we are seeing this big rise in the number of homeless people in New Brunswick, and how are we dealing with it?
So it is very concerning, and you had a fatality in St. Stephen as well, which is obviously none of us want to see that situation happen, and especially this time of year with the family now, missing a loved one who obviously met a sad ending. The homelessness is an issue throughout the province, and not unique to New Brunswick, mind you, but it is somewhat unique for New Brunswick. Moncton's seen the largest increase, but even smaller communities are seeing it. But I think the whole philosophy around how we manage to help people get help, homeless should not be a way of life. It should be a condition that we can help and find solutions so that you get out of that treadmill. And I think whether it be through mental health or addiction that causes someone to just not be able to function at home or in a normal setting, we need to have a process of, and we're evaluating and moving forward with a mental health and a treatment center. And what the volunteer groups will tell me, and even the authorities the police will say, well, if I arrest someone that's having a drug problem and I take them to court, and if they went to jail for a week or two or a month or two, they don't come out any different. Mm-hmm. They maybe get under control in jail, but as soon as they come out, they're not. So we don't have a treatment of 4 or 6 months where we can actually recover and help someone to really get rehabilitated. So that's the goal. I find that anyone suffering from addiction, in my view, we should find a path away from addiction. Mm-hmm. And I know it's not easy, and I know it's more difficult for some than others, but it's the right thing to do for the person, the family. So, and I think a lot of people, if they had a choice, they'd say, show me where to go. Mm-hmm. I'll be there. And we need to have that place to go, and that is a major focus, because homelessness cannot be a way of life. It needs to be something that says, we got to figure this out.
Are you finding that, I talked to Diane Kern at Avenue B, who said during the pandemic, drugs didn't flow as easily over borders, and that's when meth became a bigger issue in New Brunswick, and we didn't have it to the degree we have it now in the province, because it can really be made anywhere and cheaply. Has that exacerbated a pre-existing problem?
Well, very, very likely so. We know we have some significant drug problems, and we know that people are, moving into the province in some cases with large numbers or more people. So some of those are falling into this sort of scenario. All over the province, we've seen, the drug issue is rampant. Illegal activities of drugs, alcohol, tobacco. That's why in the enforcement side, we've increased the capability for our public safety officers. So they actually now are police rated, and they can perform functions in the society, because we had 50, 60, 70 public safety officers that were out in the communities traveling, but now they have greater authority and responsibility. In addition, more RCMP officers, so more visibility to see what's going on and see what drugs are being moved around the communities. We've had record number of seizures of drugs, which makes it, one, you're glad that we found them and seized them, but the other, wow, is it really out there? Is it really available? We shut down these crack houses. I think we're into the 150, 200, but they pop up here and there all over. So it is a huge challenge. And communities, in many ways, are very concerned about what's going on next door, what's going on in the street, and will there be violence created by crystal meth users? And so it's all a combination of society falling into the, a situation that we just need better control of. Mm-hmm. And I feel the process and what the nonprofits and those dealing with shelters and homeless are saying, if we have a continuum of care that's focused on recovery, it will start to make a difference.
You're adding more RCMP officers across New Brunswick, one in particular to Regional Service Commission 10, which is Charlotte County and surrounding area. What was the reason behind that? And do you think there are bigger issues at play, such as just the justice system in general, and how catch and release can complicate things?
Yes, it's a combination. So firstly, there's a formula that the RCMP look at in terms of coverage per pop, like they call it a cop per pop. So they look at the population and say, okay, do we have adequate coverage in the area? Always knowing you can bring in more recruits if there's a problem in an area. But are we out there? Are we visible? Do we have that? So that's what brought in additional people into additional communities, because of the ratio was down. So public weren't seeing police officers. I mean, that's why we did the public safety, so people in the community would see officers out on the beat. And the actual catch and release that you point to, we're told by the legal authorities that if they had an option, they could say, well, I can put you in jail for a month, or I can assign you to this recovery center for 6 months. But going free is not an option, because sometimes catch and just go back home, that doesn't do a lot for the comfort level of the communities either. They see, so okay, finally you caught that bad guy, and then a week later they're in the community again. Mm-hmm. And so they're saying, well, what's that about? So I think that this is all connected, and for us, better enforcement, but better recovery opportunities, in the case of law enforcement are not optional. It's this or this, but going back into the community and doing what you did is not an option.
I know in Charlotte County, there's always a debate over whether there should be a courthouse back in the area. Do you think that would be helpful? I've heard from RCMP officers who say taking them off the streets to go to St. John for the day also impacts the issues at play.
Well, I think we allowed the Chief Justice to go through what was appropriate here in the province. And while I know we all like to have a facility next door, it's the decision was made on the requirements and what's needed, and I guess what you're referring to is the transportation piece of it. And maybe there are better ways there if we think we're leaving the area with not the right coverage, but having another police officer there will be helpful in that. But at this stage, we'll follow the recommendation of the Chief Justice and what he believes is appropriate for New Brunswick, because we kind of looked at that all over the province.
Policy 713 was a big news highlight of 2023. Despite what your intentions were with the changes, how it played out in both the media and in the public became a different narrative. Looking back on that now, what are your thoughts? And also, there were fractures within your own caucus over 713. Do you have regrets about how everything went down? Would you change things or do things differently?
Well, I have no regrets about actually recognizing the issue and saying we cannot have parents excluded from young kids' lives. I found it really shocking that we had a policy that put parents and teachers at odds in this case. Maybe put parents or put teachers in a very difficult position where they basically were to keep secrets from parents. I don't think we should ask teachers to do that. I think that there has to be a way that kids can confide in teachers, and obviously teachers don't run home and talk to the parents. So there has to be that confidentiality in that regard. But these are life-altering decisions that are being made without parents' involvement. So the policy of saying, well, we just want to find a way that teachers or parents get to be involved, recognizing that not all parental situations would be the same, and not all parents would be supportive. And so we need to say, well, okay, the process needs to be where we understand the situation at home, we have the right counseling steps, and we are able to move forward in a direction that ultimately parents can play a role here, but do it at a time when they're able. But to have a policy that basically says all parents are delinquent, and basically a policy that would say you can't depend on parents to look after their kids. Parents are the continuity of kids. They're the ones that have the full-time responsibility, and many for longer than you would think. But when we're talking 16 and under, we all had a lot of things that we talked about when we were that age that we thought we could do or should be doing or could, and we all needed guidance. So we're very involved, my wife and I, with our kids, but we have grandchildren now. What we found out with this policy, regardless of how it came about or how it was, we looked at it last spring, all across the country, including New Brunswick, said, what is happening here in education? What do you mean that parents aren't being informed? And my child could be somebody that I don't know. What's that about? So it became a very big item. And what we're seeing too in Europe is they're saying the science has not been followed here on what we're doing to young kids, and they're changing policies in Europe, and they've been in this situation for probably earlier than North America. So I think at the end of the day, if we look at the science, it's not about a child's right or parent's right. In our case, it's about parents knowing and understanding and being continually involved with their kids' raising. But it's about, okay, is our philosophy here around the science of gender dysphoria? And recognizing, yes, there are issues, and yes, it's real. But in what we're seeing for different information is that, in our case, 60% of kids could be that say, well, I think I'm different than what my body would be, are being affirmed in their first appointment and put on puberty blockers. And then if they go to sex hormone therapy, then that they're sterile. And they're coming back later in life and say, why did you do this to me? My life has been transformed at a time when I didn't know the consequences. So that's the more knowledge, the more information, the more science that we can look at the reality of what we're doing, we'll find a better solution. And it won't all be about one right versus another right. It'll be about what makes sense.
What does it mean for, now they're known the Six Rebels, in terms of next year's election? Will you encourage all your current MLAs to have their papers signed, or is this still up in the air?
Well, some have made it very clear that they wouldn't run with me as leader. So they made their decision, right? So it is what it is. But I'm hopeful, and some are planning to retire. So I'm hopeful, though, that we'll find a path for some of the others. But time will tell, I guess.
When you look back on 2023, what do you see as the biggest accomplishments of your government? What are you most proud of? So
obviously I am proud of the fact that we've created a discussion here around parental involvement with the children, because I think it's foundational to our society. It's foundational to what we are, who we are. That families are important. When I think of the issues around the province, yeah, we've made gains to find financial stability. We have a province that's no longer on the cusp of collapse. We've had a record population growth, which has brought other challenges with housing, as we've talked, with homeless, with these issues. So I feel good about where the province is moving in a direction that is seeing us grow. And in every part of the province, I feel good about it being all over. We've seen private sector investment rebound that we didn't have for years. So we're seeing that, but the individual's seeing higher costs. And so maybe things are going well, but the point I think we need to say, well, the province is doing okay, but I'm not doing okay as a family. Well, we're not raising taxes. We're trying to mitigate the impacts. And so we're working through this time of higher inflation and higher costs. And I want to be able to continue that. Healthcare, I think we're on the cusp there, because we've got so many different avenues to primary care. Whether it be the My Health, the virtual care through Maple, through the pharmacists, through the collaborative care clinics. We've reduced the wait list from 70% or 70,000 down to about 10,000. You can get access through to a collaborative care clinic and get the help you need. But there's a big issue that we've introduced, and we're moving in the direction, is a patient-first strategy. And what that means is, if you were diagnosed and you needed critical care, or let's say someone has been told, okay, I can do your hip surgery, but it's going to be a wait time of 1.5 years. Now we've reduced wait times by about 50% now. I think we're down to less than a year for everybody. But let's say it's going to be a year, and you're saying, oh boy, I'm really bad shape. This is affecting my life here. Well, what if you could go to Hamilton and get it done next month? Would that be all right? How many people would say, absolutely, let's do it? But they're not given the option. So we have a collaboration board, if you know how we're set up the new boards. We did that because we want boards that are responsible for service delivery. We have key business people that are involved in this because we want process improvement. Everybody puts more money into healthcare. And the only solution you often hear is invest more money, will be better. We've put 21% in healthcare increases over the last 2 years. It's not going to get better until we manage it better and utilize the services all over the province, cooperating with Vitality and Horizon to deliver the best healthcare wherever you go, and utilizing facilities on either network. And that's the goal. And the collaboration board that comes out of the two, Vitality and Horizon, basically they make decisions for healthcare in New Brunswick. And that's critical, because then they'll look at the system as a whole and say, do we need this MRI, or do we need this new equipment? Yeah, okay, we need to put it here. So that's the goal. And not independently competing with each other, not having hospitals within driving distance of each other that are competing with each other, but having ones to figure out what's the best service they can provide in your community.
Should there, on that note, be more support federally, given that a lot of people in New Brunswick move away in their healthy years and come back as they retire?
Well, we actually argued that point as the Atlantic provinces. The four of us were saying that we have an aging demographic here that is much higher than other provinces. We did get a little recognition of that, but not dramatic.
When you look ahead at challenges for 2024, especially going into an election year, what do you see as the biggest challenges that you and your team will be facing?
Well, affordability is going to be a major one. Housing is obviously a major issue. The whole concept of better health care, managed health care, and what it means to patients will continue to be, forefront. Healthcare always is. Education. I'm still very concerned about our English education system, particularly. I've never been a fan of the two-tiered system, and I find it unacceptable that we have low literacy, low mathematical numeracy numbers, and we can't teach our kids to graduate speaking both languages, at least conversationally. Mm-hmm. So we're working with the teachers, we're working with the MBTA, trying to get on a roadmap that will see it get better and not be a political decision in the process.
Mm-hmm. There was, we thought, almost an election this past fall. It's now, I suppose, next fall. What made you change that decision?
Well, you're right. It was very close. And you don't wrap a bus and not be ready to go. I didn't know whether we would get the confidence vote in the fall. So that became, well, we better be ready. Because if my colleagues voted against the government, we're in election. Mm-hmm. So we were ready to pull the plug. So then when we did get the confidence vote, I mean, it took about a week to decide because we were ready to go. But it wasn't right for the public to have to endure an election when it was an internal party issue. And I felt guilty about pushing that onto the province. I mean, if I had to turn it into it because of a leadership review or something like that. But anyway, so okay, we won't have an election in 2023. So yeah, we know there will be one in October, and I guess anytime in 24 is but we know it will not be later than October.
Well, thank you so much for inviting us here for a year in review. We really appreciate these annual events and getting to look back at the year with you and ahead at the future.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Southwest Magazine is a news and public affairs production of CHCO Television.